Welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette, featuring sysadmin expert Don Pizzette, security specialist Daniel Lowry, and Peter.
Hello and welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, and I am joined today by Don Pizzette. Don, how you doing?
I am doing great. You know, we had a lot of tech news like normal and a lot of, well, we're not going to cover it today, but political news going on in the world. So it's a crazy market.
We're not going to cover that?
I don't think so.
Not a politics show.
It's very rare to see you in a non-logoed shirt.
Oh, yeah.
It's just confusing. I'm like, are you on vacation? What's going on? I don't know what's going on. And Daniel, how are you today?
I'm not unwell, enjoying the fact that I'm wearing the shirt that I should not be wearing, apparently. But
yeah, that was meant for customers. But
yeah. But you gave me one.
I did not. Don't
you
bring me into
did.
this.
He was like, a whole stack of them on that table.
That was called a trap. Entrapment.
Well
is
played,
what
sir.
we did there, and that's
Well
Daniel
played.
Lowry. Welcome, Daniel. And we also have our special guest today, who is the CEO of Real Defense, Gary Guseinov. Gary, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, guys. Good morning.
Well, it's afternoon here. There's a whole time thing. Yeah, you're west.
A little behind.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to jump in right away and learn a little bit more about you. And so let's do that in our first segment, which is rapid fire questions.
Who do you work for?
What's new?
Who are you?
What's happening?
What's wrong with you?
All right, Gary, in this segment, we're going to do some rapid fire questions. We'll rotate through the host here and we'll each ask you a question. A timer will appear on the right side of your screen. You'll have approximately 1 minute to answer each question. If you take too long, Peter will buzz you. Like that, and we'll move on to the next question. The first question is coming at you from Peter.
And the first question is always an easy one. So can you give us the Real Defense elevator pitch? And let's say it's like a 10-story elevator.
Sure. Okay, so that's a quick one. So Real Defense Holdings is an acquisition company that's focused on consumer privacy companies that are doing anywhere between $2 million and $15 million of TTM cash EBITDA. We're acquirers. We look for companies that are underperforming or performing below sort of what would be considered to be high growth category in the lower to middle markets.
So at those valuations, you're talking about small companies. It'd probably be companies that have just recently started, maybe a year or two in business. Do you find that makes things like more complex or easier? I know the larger a company is, the more business they do in different markets, the more complex their earnings are. But when it's a startup, when it's just 5 or 10 people in a single building, does that make things easier?
Actually, the companies we look for are typically not startups. They're companies who've been around for 5 to 10 years and are usually carve-outs from larger entities, larger enterprises.
Interesting. Now, I know you've got a very extensive fake history when it comes to your job roles, but your first real job apparently was as a CEO. Were you always like an entrepreneur, or how does that work out?
Well, yeah, always entrepreneur since the late 90s when I got into technology space. I had a digital marketing company that I started in 1996. And right as the internet was starting out. And so I've always been a CEO.
I just want to see you in a pair of Jinkos and, some glowy things starting a company in 96.
Back then, things were still a little bit formal, right? We hadn't reached the T-shirt and blue jeans stage.
Yeah.
Right. That was a little before that.
Suit and ties.
Suit and ties.
Yeah, not the hoodie of today and everything. So you have your hand in several different things. I noticed you're a board member at a lot of places, advisor. How do you manage to juggle all of that?
Well, I prioritize my time and commitments. And so my focus is Real Defense, and there are other opportunities that I've taken advantage of in the past few years, but they're all accretive and synergistic to what I'm doing with Real Defense.
So looking at the website, there's a lot of different products that you guys offer. Do you have any that you're like more proud of that were harder to build, or just are really cool in their space, or is that like choosing between your favorite children?
I don't think it's anything like that. But it's my most sort of passionate product. I'm more passionate about in the category that I'm very interested in exploring and developing around is consumer privacy. And so our System Mechanic Ultimate Defense has a pretty extensive privacy suite within the application, and we're constantly building on top of it. And so that's the area that I'm very interested, very passionate about.
So we got some time left. So least favorite.
Least favorite.
This was
probably antivirus, because it's a commoditized space and it's obvious and you need it. It's like,
yeah.
I thought you were going to say Huber.xyz. I know that was a mistake.
Don't give away the ideas that we were talking about before the show. We got some great product ideas that are coming up. Well, let's talk a little bit about the strategy you guys have taken to grow. And we talked a little bit about it earlier here, but in our next segment, we want to talk about mergers and acquisition as the engine driving cybersecurity. So, that's a position that you hold, that is that engine. So why is that? Why do you think that's what's driving cybersecurity forward?
Well, a couple of reasons. One is that there are a lot of gaps in cybersecurity, either in the consumer or the enterprise space. Threats evolve constantly, and we're always playing catch up. And so if you look at any environment, whether it's an enterprise or a consumer, there's always something that's missing in the cybersecurity technology stack. And so you either build it or you buy it. And so building takes a long time. It takes a lot of capital, and you might miss the product market fit. If you buy, you're usually going to find a team of developers who figured that out, who have invested a lot of time and money into building out a particular area of the technology stack, and you can take advantage of their expertise and their trajectory or their velocity in the market and acquire them. The consumer side is the same thing. You're also buying customers. Customer acquisition is expensive. Advertising is expensive. And as you get bigger, it becomes even more expensive. And so you're acquiring customers, the tech stack, and more importantly, people. Hiring people in cybersecurity is extremely difficult. It's a difficult area to be an expert in. Education doesn't really sort of kind of get you to that point of expertise that you need to be at in order to be relevant in the space. And so you really got to have hands-on experience. And, companies value cybersecurity experts probably more than someone who's not a cybersecurity expert, but also a technology expert. And so that's why M&A is strong, and it's going to continue into the future. We also have a lot of threats. And if you look at it from the other side, what's the biggest thing that's facing your organization or your household? Cyber threat. So it's pretty obvious.
It's really interesting to me because the cybersecurity space is really big. So there's a ton of different products and solutions that are out there. Some that focus on privacy and encryption and, all sorts of different aspects, some that merge it all together. I'm certain that there have been some people out there that had a great idea, but they either weren't entrepreneurs or just didn't know how to turn that into a business and make it successful. Meanwhile, there's others that jumped right in and got really big, and maybe they had a great product, maybe it was a mediocre product, but they just knew the business side of it. So do you feel that, like, as an organization that does a lot of M&A, are you going out and seeking organizations that have that great product but need that help with business leadership, or are you finding that a lot of them already have that leadership in place?
So for us, it's a combination of things that we look for, not one thing. So we look for a company that has a customer base, that has a product that's been installed and used by millions of users, not thousands. We look for profitable businesses that have a sustainable revenue stream, recurring revenue stream, or SaaS. And we'll look for metrics within these various areas of the company. And so if those metrics fit into our box, if you will, then we proceed with an offer and make a deal happen. Oftentimes they don't, and we move on. We're also not the most, I would say, highest payer in terms of multiple. And so we're not looking for the high growth, fast-paced organization that may have figured something out and they're creating this very huge valuation in the marketplace. And so we're more looking for the boring companies, the ones that are not not growing so fast and maybe lack capital or have some sort of a challenge that we can overcome if we were the owners. But like I said earlier, we're more interested in a divestiture situation where a large company that has a division, they're not interested in managing it anymore, and have sort of let go of the reins because of that, and willing to sell it for at a discount to market. So that's the ideal scenario for us.
So I'm curious on the flip side, kind of playing devil's advocate. I feel like a product could suffer in this situation, that it's purchased and then the developers that were pushing so far behind it maybe aren't motivated anymore, maybe leave, there's turnover. What do you guys do to avoid that and make sure that you're still able to support the product and continue to grow the product?
That's a good question. So when we do an acquisition, we actually keep everyone intact in terms of staff and developers. And developers is the lifeblood of these companies. So the last person we want to get rid of is a developer, or anyone for that matter, that understands cybersecurity within the acquisition spectrum of our targets. And so we keep everyone on board. The customer ultimately wins, because if this company is a division of a bigger company and they're not focused on developing the product, then the customer ultimately suffers because they're not updating features, they're not maintaining certain standards. When we come in, we do the opposite. We turn the product quality around, we invest into it, we invest into standards and compliance, and make sure that the product is up to a certain level of quality where maybe it wasn't before we did the acquisition. So we've done that a few times already, and it's worked out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So moving on to what you guys are working on now. I know you mentioned you have a couple of new products coming out, so probably acquisitions. But can you tell us a little bit? I think one of them was a new VPN.
Yes, so we're launching a what's called IOLO VPN. It's a VPN platform very similar to some of the popular products out there. We have a unique pricing schema and also a sort of licensing. Each license can work on 5 devices, and most of our competitors allow to work on 3 devices. There's also some features and capabilities that are unique in the marketplace. And a second product we've got coming out is called IOLO Safe Search. It's a privacy search engine, very similar to DuckDuckGo. It's going to allow you to surf the web in full privacy without being tracked. And so those are 2 products coming out this quarter. Very excited about them. We think there will be high adoption, and we're targeting other products down the road, but all going to be focused around privacy on your device and how you can control tracking, whether it's from friendlies or unfriendlies.
Search did well for like Google, so it'll probably be all set. $1 trillion. Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of search engines failed though too.
Well, they didn't track like that Google does.
What was the Ghost Scout or
what? Ghost Scout?
It was like a dog.
There have been several that failed over the years, like Lycos and WebCrawler and those guys. But I think now, like, privacy-driven search engines are really important, and we have DuckDuckGo.
Start Page is another one,
and Brave's launching one. But
they
all kind of have mediocre results. So it's kind of a good market if somebody could get that mix of really good results
spot.
and
Gary's on it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're focused on. Our search is going to give you the same sort of experience as you would expect from a search engine. So we're not eliminating results or precluding you from seeing certain content. It's the opposite. What we're really doing is mitigating the trackable information so that there's a certain amount of information you can give up and certain amount of information you don't have to give up. But more importantly is giving you more control over how your information is tracked and not put you into this complex puzzle of tracking opt-out that Google puts you in. And so, but nobody wants to deal with that. And so,
right. Yeah, definitely. Well, Gary, we want to thank you for taking the time with us today, especially, we don't really talk about the mergers and acquisitions a lot and that kind of growth. So that was interesting. So thank you so much.
Pleasure being here, guys.
All right, stay tuned, everybody. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and discuss the news from this week coming up on Technado with Don Pezet.
So Right Networks is an awesome company. We've developed a study group environment where we have small groups of 4 to 5 people in each of our office locations that meet once a week, and they talk together about what they're doing in their certification.
We developed a recommended reading list. We do a couple chapters each one, as well as the IT Pro TV videos.
Not only does our company provide incentives to take the tests, but we pay for the tests. We also pay for the time to study on the tests, and we give a bonus to the employees if they pass the test.
It's one thing to study for months on end toward a goal by yourself, but to have someone else with you, like, there's a lot of benefit of that.
All right, welcome back to Technado with Don Pizzette, and a lot of news to get to today. As Don mentioned, I guess we got into political stuff last week, but we're not doing that so much this week. But
Just realized you're both wearing blue polos.
You didn't get the memo?
yeah,
I
Blue
guess
Polo
not.
Day.
Yeah.
I got I binge on IT Pro TV shirt
On the day
rocking
we're
right now.
filming this, it's Tuesday.
That's
Oh, yeah.
true.
It's like Super Tuesday,
Yeah.
and not the one we vote on.
2/22/22.
Not the one we did. That's right. Which is
And Tuesday.
not only a palindrome, but if you flip it upside down, it still reads the same way as well. An abendrome.
I thought if you flip it upside down,
Abigram.
doesn't it say like Satan is great or something?
Well, I mean, it always does that.
Wow, okay.
It's one of those. Paul is dead. I don't know, something.
Yeah. He's not wearing shoes.
All right, let's get to our first article, which is from TechSpot.com. AMD surpasses Intel's market cap for the first time ever. And this is something I feel like we kind of predicted a little bit, like a year or so ago, that we saw Intel making a lot of dumb moves. Yeah.
Yeah, Intel has dominated the processor market for decades, for a long, long time. And,
For like ever, right?
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you had IBM before that.
Oh, yeah, that's
and their processors, even Texas Instruments. You had several other chip players before Intel really just stepped in and dominated.
But it was that Pentium, man.
But they've never,
man. All about that Pentium.
But they never really killed all their competition. So there were always some other companies floating around. You had Cyrix for a little while. You had a handful of others, and AMD has always been kind of floating along as that second place processor manufacturer.
Nothing wrong with silver.
No, there isn't, except when you're, the gold person gets so much more recognition and so much
They're
more
the
money.
Burger King of chip manufacturers.
Well, Intel has had a few missteps over the last 5 years, but you could say even a little bit further, they kind of lost their way. And AMD has made up some ground in that time, really, really jumping some hurdles. And with their acquisition of Xilinx, the FPGA manufacturer, they acquired them for something ridiculous.
$49 billion all-stock takeover.
There we go. So with that, they have now become the processor manufacturer with the largest market cap in the entire world. They have surpassed Intel for the first time ever.
What does market cap mean?
So that's your market capitalization, or how much money you can make. Not how much money you did make, but how much money you can make.
How do they project that?
So math.
Voodoo.
That's what I thought. So somebody throws chicken bones on a pool of blood.
It's much more serious. There's a thing you shake, and it says sources point to 49 billion.
I got you.
So they have their projected numbers, and it's the numbers they should hit, and they realistically should be able to hit.
Okay.
But this is not. It's not like AMD came up with a great idea last week, and all of a sudden
Just number one screwed up enough to.
It doesn't mean that their CPUs are necessarily better than Intel's or not. This is growth by acquisition, right? So they bought a $50 billion company, and that adds $50 billion to their value, and and here you are. So it is just neat to see, though. Like, AMD's really been making some big jumps. I still refuse to use AMD processors in servers, so there's that. But
and why is that?
Well, performance.
Gotcha.
Intel processors have always given me better performance, more reliable performance. But now with the ARM processors doing all that they're doing, I don't know. I don't know how much we even need to worry about AMD versus Intel
how long
anymore.
before the M1 just takes over everything? And
I don't think that'll happen.
well, at least something similar.
But Intel has been investing in the RISC-V chips and some of the ARM architectures. AMD is working on some projects too. So I suspect we'll see different ARM processors, or I guess to clarify, like the M1 processor is not an ARM processor.
Okay.
It supports the ARM language. That's how you talk to it using the ARM instruction set.
So
but the processor is completely Apple proprietary.
Okay.
So AMD and Intel could make their own processors that use the ARM feature set, And then you could have one operating system that could run on an Apple M1 or an Intel whatever and so on. They won't do that, but you could.
Do you feel like it's time to give AMD another shot? Like you haven't used it in a while, but maybe it's been a while. Things have changed there.
Yeah, I would say their desktop processors have really improved. Their server processors, I do actually try them out from time to time. About every 6 months, I go and do some testing.
Oh, okay.
And there's a website called Pharonix, which is like a Linux news site, and that guy does benchmarks all the time, and you can see kind of how they're improving and getting better. But usually AMD will give you better performance on a single core, and Intel will give you better performance across multiple cores. Gotcha. And servers use multiple cores, desktops really don't. So that's usually where the difference is.
Would you say for Intel, like the start of the decline was like Spectre and Meltdown, or was it before that?
It was before that. They had a leadership vision problem, right? Remember, maybe you guys don't remember, but like when the Pentium came out, that was a big deal. People wanted a Pentium, and then when the Pentium 2 and the Pentium 3,
twice as good,
right? So and these were big jumps in megahertz. You went from like a 266 megahertz to a 450 megahertz, like almost double.
You were like doubling your speeds, yeah.
Well, then you get to today, and like how many more cores can you pack in there? And
we're gonna find out, I'm sure.
And those cores have been between like 2 and 4 gigahertz for years now, so that they're not able to make those dramatic jumps. So you got to find some way to make your processors more attractive, and they just haven't really found a way to do that. And then with their 5 nanometer, their what's it called? Not a foundry. Whatever the equipment is they use to manufacture the processors, their factory was just screwed up.
It's a 3D printer.
It was.
That's a 3D printer.
It was getting like negative yields, and like they just could not manufacture those processors, and so they were stuck on larger dies than all of their competition, and that really hurt them.
Well, that'll teach them to suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to be good at CPUs.
They should stop doing that.
They got a new CEO, and he had a funny quote. He's actually an old Intel employee they brought back, and he said, look, we've got to be able to make better processors than some fruit company from California. and really, well, he was being sarcastic. It's true. Like, if
they're
Apple
not
could just...
processor manufacturers, they make laptops and desktops.
Yeah, and basically like their first foray into the industry is like, wow, this is amazing.
We kicked the piss out of you.
I mean, Apple doesn't put out a product unless they're sure. But,
I mean, that's got to hurt going down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at our next article from ArsTechnica.com. Chrome OS Flex is an ideal off-ramp for millions of PCs that can't run Windows 11. And I was reading about something this week, actually, that was like, there's a lot more computers than they thought that couldn't run Windows 11, and people are looking for alternatives.
Yeah, most consumer laptops don't ship with a TPM. If you just go to Best Buy, half the laptops you see on the shelves don't have a TPM in them, and that's a requirement for Windows 11. Well, this article is a little bit kind of forgetting one point, which is, all right, maybe you can't run Windows 11. And guess what? You can still run Windows 10, which is supported through 2025. And so you
got a little more time before you go
3 more years.
Jump to another operating system. Yeah.
So it's not that big of a deal. But, Google has had their Chrome OS, which you've been able to buy Chromebooks, these low-priced laptops that you could run Chrome OS on. But they had to be official through Google or through Google's partners, like Toshiba, Samsung, several of those companies made Chromebooks. Well, I think Asus actually made some. I'm mentioning them because we'll talk about them later. But there have been unofficial ports of Chrome OS that you could run on any laptop. And because it's all built on Chromium and Linux, and so people would kind of cobble together their own thing, but Google wouldn't support it. Well, one of the biggest projects that did that was a open source project called Cloud Ready, and Google has basically acquired them and given them the official blessing of saying this isn't just a Chromium variant anymore. This is actual Chrome OS. And so now you can go and get Chrome OS Flex and install it on just about any laptop, old Macs, old Windows machines, and it'll run Chrome OS. Now you get a modern, currently supported operating system, and you can continue to use that device into the future.
So Chrome OS Flex, is that the new name of what you were just saying?
Right. So you still have Chrome OS, which is the official, that's what comes on Chromebooks. But then Chrome OS Flex is just software. It's a software distribution you can install yourself.
I feel like there was like the board members at Google were just sitting around going, "How do we track the cheap bastards that won't buy a Chromebook?" And even though their laptop is expired, I've got an idea.
Yep.
Well, it's smart. Even though you said people can still go to Windows 10.
Sure.
It's definitely smart for these other companies to go, hey, Windows 11 won't work for you. And, you don't have any option. Come here. So it's good.
I mean,
marketing.
it's not like they don't have any option. Like you said, there's Windows 10. And I mean, I know this would be a Linux fanboy saying, there's Linux distributions out there that work pretty well as desktop operating systems. I'm thinking like Elementary and Zorin and other ones that are kind of like geared toward that. And they take up very little resources, and they're a full-fledged operating system. They don't stop you from doing things.
Yeah, there's a couple like kind of Windows clone. Or is it Mint or no? What is
Mint's
the one
not
that people?
Windows clone, but
it kind of looks like it.
It's a great
You could come over and as a Windows user and figure it out
pretty quickly. Yeah.
And Chrome OS is pretty neat because you can run Android apps on it. In addition to you've got the Chrome browser, which is what most people need to do their work. It's not very resource intensive, so you can get it up and going pretty easy. It's kind of a neat way, especially if you've got there's always Black Friday deals where there's those computers that have Celeron or i3 processors in them, or the mobile Celerons, and then they'll have 128 gigs of flash. Not SSD, like not true NVMe or whatever, but just flash, and 4 gigs of RAM or 3 gigs of RAM. Those things, they can run Windows 10, but not very well.
Yeah.
But you throw Chrome OS Flex on there, and it runs great.
Now it's screaming.
Yeah.
No, I do all my gaming on those.
Yeah.
I'm not very good.
You joke about it, but you can run the Steam client on there, or the GeForce Now, and those cloud streaming services.
Play Battle Tanks or whatever the hell is in the Google Play Store.
Worms.
Worms. I love the Worms games.
Yeah, fun.
That's good stuff.
I believe it's pronounced Worms.
Oh, my bad. Is it German?
No. In Germany, maybe.
Yeah. Sure. All right, let's move over now to our next article from TechRadar.com. Multiple vulnerabilities put 40 million Ubuntu users at risk.
That can't be true.
No, it says it right here.
Oh, yeah.
The
You're right, it
snap
does.
confine function had a flaw.
Snap at it again, huh?
Yeah. So, the headline alone is not a big deal for us. We hear this every week, right? And millions of people are always at risk, and we get a CVE number and all that, big deal, right? But the part that sets this apart is the fact that it is a flaw in the snap confine function. Now, if you're not familiar with snap,
I'm not.
Snap is the packaging system that Canonical, the people who make Ubuntu, have really been pushing over the last few years, where they say, all right, instead of installing an application directly, and then you've got to make sure you have all the dependencies that come along with it, instead, you can download a snap image. And that image will have the application and all of its required libraries and other bits and pieces along with it, kind of like a container.
I was going to say, it kind of sounds like Docker.
Very similar to Docker, right? And then when you run the application, you see the application just like any other app, but it's actually running in its own little world with its own dependencies. Now, when this was first announced, a lot of security researchers were opposed to this. And the reason was, when you install an application directly, you can update the libraries, the dependencies. You can update them whenever you want. But when you get a snap, it's up to the application author to update that snap. And there could be libraries and dependencies in there that have known vulnerabilities, but the authors haven't chosen to update their snap image yet.
You've basically outsourced the updating process.
Yeah.
You're trusting them to do it for you.
Especially when the snap involves anything with Java. You could have 5 or 6 different versions of the Java runtime environment because of these different snaps. So there's people like me where when I install Ubuntu, one of the first things I do is disable and remove snapd. Just get it out of there because I don't want to use it. And you can still install all the applications directly.
Plus, I mean, I'm just an old apt user.
Yeah.
God forbid we just stick with that. It works really well. And if you need to containerize, like you say, there's Docker.
Yep. Now, we're talking about Snap, which is what Canonical pushed, but like Fedora supports Flatpak, which is same idea, just a different technology, same complaints. Everything I just said about Snap applies to Flatpak as well.
Is it like containers though, where like let's say there's a compromise there, can it jump out of that container, so to speak?
So normally you can't, but in this case you can, and that was the flaw.
So,
was
yes.
they found a way to basically escape the sandbox that they were in. They did responsible disclosure. A patch was released, and so if you've done your Ubuntu updates, you are already protected from this. If you haven't done your updates, you need to do them, unless you don't use snaps.
Updates are hard though. You got to press update and everything.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of work.
That threat of a possible reboot is so
man,
much anxiety.
I would rather take a beating to the cojones. I got to be honest with you.
You got to look at that as a break from work.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, right. I got no.
Would love to be working, but
this thing here.
Windows update.
I just think
Snap update.
the gall of them expecting me to save my documents. I don't have time for that.
Right? I mean, the unmitigated gall.
I am constantly at risk of, like, if a power failure comes, that I will lose hours of work because I'm not doing it.
It's funny, we joke about it, but
I'm not doing it.
I use Sublime Text as my text editor. I write almost everything in Sublime Text because I don't have to save.
Yeah.
Like if you close
I
the
use
window,
Atom, it does the same thing.
Yeah. So
It just saves for you? Or is
It doesn't really. It's like it's like a
scratch
journaling
memory or something,
yeah,
right?
it's like journaling what you've done and then just kind of saves it for you.
I mean, that's the nice thing about like Windows, like Office 365, is that it's there.
Oh, right, in the cloud. Yeah.
And you've got the revision history too,
Right.
because I mean, everybody had a horror story about losing a term paper or something, and back in college.
I remember when I discovered Partition Tragic. Oh, brother. I was like, this is so cool. Where is all my stuff? Oh, dear Jesus, please.
Peter, you probably don't know.
I don't know this one.
The product was actually called Partition Magic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was supposed to allow you to resize your hard drive.
Okay.
But it had would you say a 50% fail rate? It was
Dude,
pretty
it was
high.
rough.
And when it failed, you were effed. Like,
Just got rid of
Big
everything.
time. Yeah. Because you're like, cool, now this is resize, restart. It's like, what do you mean you can't find operating system?
I've got all this new room on my hard drive.
What in the actual hell is happening here?
Yeah, I wonder how they're able to get all this new room on my hard. Oh, it's by deleting everything that I ever had. Oh, that's nice.
I'm going to go have a heart attack.
yeah. So instead of Partition Magic,
Yeah.
people affectionately called it Partition
And this
Tragic.
was well before like external drives for backups
Yeah.
was like a real thing.
Yeah, because I mean, for the longest time, it was like Mac had Time Machine, and it was like Windows had, I don't know.
They had this volume shadow copy.
Yeah, you had some like the Windows backup, which was never quite as great. So that's why you had third-party stuff like a Acronis True Image or Norton Ghost. Remember that one?
Or what we're going to talk about next.
Oh, yeah.
would be a great way to back up your stuff.
Absolutely.
Segue right on.
If it didn't suck, but unfortunately, it's this week's Who Got Pwned.
Looks like you're about to get pwned.
Fatality.
Yeah!
All right, this one comes to us from tomshardware.com. Deadbolt ransomware attacks target Asustor NAS. So this is like a what's the one we were talking about? The thing we have here.
The QNAP.
The QNAP, yes.
Yep.
This is like a QNAP kind of thing, but this one doesn't work either.
Yeah, so many companies and individuals have started using network-attached storage devices that connect to the cloud in one form or another. Maybe they replicate to the cloud to have a second copy of the data, or more commonly, they connect to the cloud to make it where even if you're traveling and remote, you can still access your storage device. Well, you may remember from about 4 or 5 months ago, we reported on a malware that was spreading across QNAP devices. And so if you had a QNAP NAS, it could get hit by this malware that would then encrypt the entire storage appliance, which really sucks, obviously. Well, QNAP went through their deal. They pushed out a patch for it and kind of fixed it. But one of those malware programs, one called Deadbolt, is doing the rounds now, but not for QNAP this time. This time it's for Asustor.
Which
NAS.
it's the same ransomware that was affecting QNAP?
Yes, that is correct. Yep. They've ported it over to target these. And who knows, maybe it worked against these in the very beginning and just nobody noticed. It's not as big a brand.
Yeah, I was going to say, you'd go for the top first, where the most stuff is.
But Asustor is pretty big. They are a division of Asus, the people who make laptops and other devices, monitors, tons of computer equipment. My computer at home is mostly Asus hardware.
Asus monitor. It's nice.
Yeah, I like their stuff. Yep. I believe they're out of Taiwan, if I recall correctly. But they generally make good stuff. But in this case, This
They made a real
particular
turd.
thing, yeah, on the software side,
On the software
absolutely.
side. They phoned it in.
Even if you haven't logged in to the cloud service, if you haven't activated it, the device still phones home to check for updates, and the attackers are able to piggyback off of that to infect your NAS and basically encrypt the whole thing, which is bad. Some of the positives for this, one positive is the ransom's pretty low. Looks like the average ransom is about $1,100.
That's not bad.
So it's not like crazy millions.
I mean, mom and pop are going to have trouble.
Yeah.
But they could do it.
It's an achievable number,
Yeah.
I think. But the only solution right now, because a patch has not been released, is to disconnect the device from the internet, which all of a sudden takes your network attached storage into not network attached.
Exactly.
It's an NNAS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of them actually do have like a USB cable you can plug in to access it
this
that
is
way.
a physical device. So is there... are there multiple interfaces on it, and one of them connects to the internet, and one of them connects to your local network, or how's it reaching out into the internet? Is it port forwarding?
So
or?
it depends on the model you buy.
Okay.
I believe they do have one model that has a Wi-Fi card, but all of the others just plug into your regular network.
Okay.
And then they get natted and go out to the internet. They phone home.
Yeah.
And that's what builds that reverse tunnel to connect them up to the cloud service.
Gotcha.
So that's how they work. They get a direct IP on your network.
I feel like there's a way around this and still allow it to connect to the internet.
Oh, outbound firewall rules,
Yeah, that's
that kind
what
of
I'm
stuff.
thinking.
Yeah,
Right.
you could certainly do protections. But if the malware were able to get into the system, then it's
your
not really going
host.
to matter what you
Right.
do. But so the recommendation right now is to disconnect. The folks at Asustor have been notified, but they have not put out a patch yet. And so this is one that's being actively exploited out there in the real world. You need to be aware.
Yeah, so if your NAS is infected,
So unplug that
Contact your
mother
doctor.
like right now.
Well, let's take this as a learning lesson, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
we've talked about QNAP, we've talked about Asustor, so maybe you're sitting there and you're thinking, I got a Synology, what do I care,
Yeah.
right? Or whatever. Do you have an
I
NAS?
don't have any,
No.
yeah.
All right, I have a home-built one. But
You apparently have a lot more data than I
think
do.
about it. You do have a decent bit. It's my Plex server.
yes, because we all have access to it.
I have a Plex server as well.
So, use this as a moment, though, to think about that device. Think about, like, if it got hit with ransomware, could you restore it? And in the case of my Plex server, the answer is pretty much no. I do have one offline backup of it. But if you got an offline backup, that's great. If not, does my Plex server really need to go out to the internet? Like, do I ever connect to it from outside of my house? The answer there is no, I don't. But I do
I
download
do.
metadata.
I do.
Oh, are you connected to mine?
Yeah.
I got a few people connected.
I connect.
Yes. So, that's going to be an issue for me if you shut that down.
But
Do you have one?
can.
Do you have a Plex server?
No, I have.
You
his.
just use Don's. Gotcha. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, we like to share around here. I was going to say, hey, if
Sharing
you
is
got a
caring.
Plex server, I'm going to need that login.
So in those scenarios, you need to evaluate it, though, and say, does this actually need to be connected? In my case, apparently so. And if not, then you could cut that off. You could put in a firewall. You could do all sorts
Yeah.
of different things. Yeah.
You should start like Don Plus, like your own subscription.
It's all fun and games, so the RIA
I mean, I
shows
guess
up.
it starts like, it starts like exposing the idea that just because you're a home user doesn't necessarily mean you don't have stuff that people want to have access to. So it is up to us, and the onus is on us to start thinking more securely, and how maybe I should have already done firewall rules and things of that nature to
Well,
keep.
it doesn't matter if they want access to it. They want access to your money.
They want
that's-
access to
They want the
everything.
ransom.
No, yeah, right. It does not matter. If by very nature the only thing they want is to have another bot in their botnet,
Yeah.
then they're coming for you.
Well, you said we would not get political on this episode, but Don did say that Asus is from Taiwan. He did not call it Chinese Taipei, so we just lost 1 billion listeners.
Wait, are we supposed to call it Chinese?
I don't
Taipei?
know.
Oh, okay.
So
I lost
China
track.
says that Taiwan is China, and Taiwan
Chinese
says
Taipei.
no, the hell it's not.
All right.
And there's some like saber rattling that goes on in there. We have historically the United States has like, how do I say this? We've said we will defend you if an invasion occurs.
Like Ukraine.
Like,
So apparently that is beginning to like become a more thin veiled threat than.
Right.
There you go.
yeah, we
That's-
can't even talk about Ukraine
there's
just
the
because
world news
we don't
for
know
you.
what's going to happen between when we record this episode and then like a day later when it's out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
we'll
a
see.
crazy one.
Yeah, we will.
All right. Well, speaking of crazy things, this next article certainly fits the bill, and it is our dough segment.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, so, do.
All right, this one was all over the place, but we found it on slashdot.org. A father accidentally shut down his town's whole internet in an effort to limit his kids' screen time because the kids were basically addicted to social media. But what I love is the time of day.
Well, that doesn't sound right.
I know, right? It was midnight to 3 a.m. It's basically, so, he'd go to bed and he knew that the kids were going online then. And
how did he take down his whole...
A jammer.
Yeah, so
not a rule or anything on his own.
Yeah, not like unplugging a cable in the house.
Yeah.
So do you remember we covered an article last year about this one city where their cable broadband would go out every day at the same time, and it was because this one family was turning on an old TV, right? And that disturbed the signal. This is similar, but
that was not malicious.
This is a little more madness tacked onto
doing
it.
anything with the internet. He was just turning a TV on.
But this isn't a country. This is in France.
This is in France,
where jammers are illegal. Period.
Yeah, jammers are illegal here in the U.S. as well.
Okay.
So
they are illegal here.
They're illegal in most places. And what's going on here is that this father had apparently bought his children cell phones, right? So they had mobile devices with cellular internet. And the kids were staying up too late using their devices and not going to bed. So he had to come up with a solution, right?
I like how his solution was build a jammer or buy a jammer and not, hey, y'all, here's some flip phones. Give me those smartphones. See you later.
Yeah. Or
stop paying your bill.
Yeah.
It's bedtime. Give me your phones.
Yeah.
Or,
they make little jails you can buy, like time locked.
He could have done parenting, but instead,
he chose a different route.
He went the nuclear option.
He went the next route.
He didn't want to be seen as the bad guy. He was like, I don't know what the hell this ain't working.
What is the range on these jammers, though, to affect as much as it affected?
So that's the interesting part here. So a lot of the jammers are supposed to be pretty focused, pretty small area. Yeah. And the reason they're illegal here in the U.S., well, first off, the FCC controls those waves, and you're not allowed to transmit on it. So there's that, right? But when cell phones started beginning to become popularized, and pagers especially, people started buying these jammers so they could take them with them to the movie theater. They got so tired of hearing beeps during movies.
We did a story about a guy that had one in his car.
Yes,
to stop other commuters from being on their
watching their phones instead of paying attention to the
and he was arrested as well because you can't call 911. You can't you do.
Right. I mean, I can totally sympathize with it, but
yeah, totally, yeah.
So this guy's apparently was a little bit more powerful, and they say he took down the whole internet. It really wasn't the whole internet, but basically he disturbed the cell phone signal for his whole block. For I think there were 10 or 12 houses.
And now
that were all
they call
affected.
them the tumor family.
And they must have been somewhere rural for everybody to be on cellular internet as opposed to cable broadband or something. But yeah, so from midnight to 3 a.m. and it happened enough times, people started calling in tickets. And so finally, the government had to investigate. And that's when they found the jammer.
How many people in this town are up at midnight to 3 a.m.?
That's the thing. Think about how long this was going on for that to happen, because enough for a couple calls they're gonna check. No, service is fine. How many calls do they have to get to say okay, this, because they literally sent a person out there at midnight to walk around like detecting signals and stuff, which is that's
get those.
It is a black
that's
hole.
tier 2 support.
You get those irate callers saying, "Look, on Showtime, the French Showtime, the best stuff comes on from midnight to 3 a.m."
Right. That is true. That is true. As someone who had a friend with a satellite dish in college. That's great. So how does a jammer work? Is it just sending out massive noise?
Yeah, it's on the same frequency and it sends out noise, and so it interferes with the cell signal and makes it where it's corrupted. Yeah. Yep. It's effective. I'm sure those kids couldn't get on the internet, but those jammers are not cheap.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's illegal to own it, but it's one of those things legal to buy but just not use?
He was just looking for a reason to buy a jammer, and he was a hammer looking for a nail and found it.
Maybe. I think it was more of a passive-aggressive thing. I think he just didn't want to discipline his children.
And be the bad guy.
Yeah, so I'll just disable the signal.
I wonder if his kids were the ones that called support.
How'd that work out for him? Yeah, that would have been awesome.
It's really localized here in the kitchen.
Yeah. So they didn't say what happened to the guy, but here in the U.S. you'd get a fine.
He was executed.
I saw it. It said he faces up to 6 months
In
I mean,
the
you know, it's
guillotine.
probably first offense kind of thing, but
They just haven't sentenced him yet.
no, yeah, he was just found out basically, but there's fines potentially, and I think it was like $30,000 equivalent in fines potentially in 6 months. We're like maximum, so it'll probably be. Probation.
I looked around this morning, and it must be legal to sell these because it was trivial for me to find numerous models that range from like $150 to $300, kind of depending on how much of an area you wanted to shut off. So even here in the U.S., you can buy them pretty readily, but using them is illegal. I believe there is a license you can apply for to get them approved.
Yeah.
But, not many people are going to have that.
Those people that build like mini cell phone towers in their car.
Well,
it's like
I was thinking more
crazy.
like I've been to some military bases where they had phone-free zones where your phones did not work.
Oh, yeah.
So, they are likely either using that
that kind
or
of
it's
stuff.
just the radiation. And we'll see how many tumors I have later.
Yeah. I'll get my tumor needs a cigarette. Just put that.
You got to be like that guy that put the Starlink dish on his car. Just be, would you get around jammers that way? Maybe
What is he?
It's not
Weird Al,
cell,
right? Doesn't he have a song
It's
about
a different frequency.
Yeah, it's point to point, and
Yeah.
Yep. Good stuff.
Good times.
Fun times. Technology. Woohoo.
Hey everybody, got a big webinar coming up here with Daniel. It is today, Thursday.
What's happening?
February 24th. You're doing a webinar.
Okay.
You do a lot of webinars.
Starting your ethical
I try.
hacking career, a pen tester's guide, and it's with Philip Wiley, who is the Pen Tester Blueprint author.
Co-author. Yes.
Fun fact, he's Wile E. Coyote's cousin.
Fun fact, he was a professional wrestler.
And he wrestled a bear,
He wrestled
according
a
to his
flippin' bear.
PowerPoint.
Now the viewers are confused and wondering which of these stories is true.
Yeah.
All of them. Yeah, and the book was put out by Wiley.
Right.
No relation.
Yeah,
Different spelling.
He threatened to wrestle them
Yes.
if they did not comply, and they said, "Oh."
He was like, "I will come from the top ring."
Bart
thing.
the Bear was like, "You better listen. This guy's legit."
Bart the Bear. All right, that's taking place, like I said, today, Thursday, February 24th. Head over to itpro.tv/webinars to register for it. Or if you're listening after the fact, don't worry. It will be archived at that same page, itpro.tv/webinars. And then head over to technado.com and check out the site and see all the latest episodes. Check out some swag. Send us some feedback. Let us know how we've disappointed you. And then click the big orange button that says sponsored by IT Pro TV, where you can get a 30% off coupon code for the lifetime of your personal membership to IT Pro TV. And you can also request a team trial for teams of 2 or more people and find out the great features available to you there and special pricing for businesses all over there at technado.com. So check it out. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Good one. And... I hope we're not invaded by Russia between now and next week.
Are they invading us, or are they invading you?
I got to think that it's a stepping stone.
It's a stepping stone.
We have to get some separatists in town first.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Then you're on your way.
They're like, there's pro-Russia leanings here in Florida.
Is there really?
No, I'm saying if we get the separatists. Oh. Yeah. Again, it's.
I thought you were saying the separatists are already here.
Got to follow the instructions.
They are not here.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next week right here on Technado with Don Pizzette.